The candlelight of the ballroom wasn't warm. It was an interrogation. For Miss Genevieve Holland, this night was supposed to save her family. But in the glittering world of the London elite, secrets are a currency, and her family's account was about to be emptied. She thought the only threat was the terrifying, silent Duke of Garrick, the man they called the Devil's Bargain. She was wrong. The real threat was the truth. And when it was spilled for the whole world to hear, when every eye turned on her with scorn, only one person moved. The one man she'd been warned against. The Duke no one trusted. The ballroom at Lady Beaumont's London residence, situated in the impeccable geometry of St. James's Square, was suffocating. It was not a lack of air. Indeed, the tall French doors stood open to the mild May evening, but a lack of oxygen. Genevieve Holland felt every stare as a physical weight, every whispered aside a pinprick against her skin. This was her third season. In the unforgiving arithmetic of the ton, this meant she was no longer a fresh debutante, but a lingering commodity. "You see, Genevieve?" Her father, Bartholomew Holland, murmured, his grip on her elbow just a fraction too tight. "Lord Ashworth is by the fire." Genevieve smiled, a brittle, practiced expression that did not reach her eyes. "Yes, father. He seems very intent on his conversation. He is a good man, a solid man," her father stressed. "Our family needs solidarity. These new money vultures are circling constantly." Bartholomew Holland was a man of respectable shipping wealth, but his fortune, like his temper, was volatile. He had clawed his way into this world, and he expected his daughter to be the final lock on their social standing. A marriage to the landed, titled, and utterly beige Lord Ashworth was that lock. Genevieve scanned the room. The air shimmered with perfume, beeswax, and the subtle rot of gossip. Her friend, Philippa Ogilvy, waved languidly from across the floor, already flanked by two insipid young lieutenants. Philippa, with her flawless dowry, could afford to be languid. Genevieve could not. Then the atmosphere in the room changed. It did not cool. It froze. Heads turned, not with the polite, sweeping glances of the aristocracy, but with sharp, bird-like jerks. The whispers, moments ago a dull hum, coalesced into a single, sibilant word. Garrick. He stood in the archway, a towering silhouette against the light of the hall. Rhys, the Duke of Garrick. He was not supposed to be there. He never attended such frivolous affairs. The man was a spectre, a creature of the gambling hells and the shadowy corners of the stock exchange. He had inherited his title barely 2 years prior, after his father and elder brother, both notorious wastrels, died in a convenient and suspiciously fiery carriage crash. Rumour insisted Rhys had arranged it. Other rumours claimed he had murdered his first wife, a fragile creature who had thrown herself from the cliffs of his northern estate. The Morning Post called him the Shadow Duke. The gossips in this very room called him the Devil's Bargain. He was dark, not in the romantic, poetic sense, but in a way that seemed to absorb the light around him. His suit was impeccably tailored by Poole, yet he wore it like armour. He did not smile. His eyes, a cold, startling grey, swept the room with an unnerving combination of boredom and assessment. "Stay clear of that man," her father hissed, pulling her back. "He is poison, Genevieve. He ruins everything he touches." Genevieve nodded, her heart thumping a strange, discordant rhythm. Lord Ashworth was approaching, his pale face set in a look of mild determination. This was it. This was the night her future would be bartered for a solid title. She turned, ready to offer her hand, when her gaze was snagged across the room. The Duke of Garrick was looking directly at her. It was not the leering look of a predator, nor the appreciative glance of a gentleman. It was analytical. It was as if he were a jeweler inspecting a stone, checking for its flaws. He knew her father, she realized. They were rivals in the shipping world. Garrick's new, ruthlessly efficient shipping line was strangling Holland's older, more established routes. This was the vulture her father had meant. A cold dread, entirely separate from her marital anxieties, settled in her stomach. Garrick took a step into the room, and the crowd parted around him, like water flowing around a block of granite. He ignored them all, his path set toward the card room. But as he passed, his gaze lingered on her once more. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. It was not a greeting. It was an acknowledgement, as if to say, "I see you." Genevieve shivered, turning abruptly to the waiting Lord Ashworth. "My lord," she said, her voice a strained whisper. "How kind of you to join me." As Ashworth led her into the quadrille, Genevieve could not shake the feeling of those grey eyes. The ballroom felt less like a party and more like a stage, the curtains about to rise on a tragedy. And the Duke of Garrick, the man no one trusted, was the only one who seemed to be reading the script. The orchestra swelled, playing a popular waltz. Genevieve had survived the quadrille with Lord Ashworth, who had spoken at length about his prize-winning turnips. She was now enduring a country dance, her hand held limply by a young officer who was more interested in the champagne tray. Her father was in the card room, likely losing money he couldn't afford to. Her mother was in the corner with the other matrons, her face a mask of anxious pride. It was all so terribly, painfully normal. Genevieve excused herself, pleading the heat, and slipped onto the terrace. The cool night air was a relief. Below her, the carriages lined the square, the horses stamping impatiently. She leaned against the cold stone balustrade, closing her eyes for just a moment. "A bit much for you, Miss Holland." The voice was low and resonant, carrying a faint accent she couldn't place. Not quite Welsh, not quite Northern. She spun around. The Duke of Garrick stood in the shadows of the French door, holding a glass of brandy. "Your Grace," she stammered, dropping into a curtsy. "You startled me. I was just catching my breath." "Were you?" He stepped into the moonlight, and she saw him clearly for the first time. He was not handsome in the classical sense. His face was too harsh, his nose slightly crooked, as if it had been broken. But his presence was overwhelming. "It looked to me like you were bracing for impact." I don't know what you mean." "Your father," Rhys said, swirling the brandy. "He is desperate. He is betting your future on Ashworth, and he is betting his own on the turn of a card. Both are poor wagers." Genevieve stiffened, her fear replaced by a sudden, sharp anger. "You have no right, Your Grace, to speak of my family's affairs. You know nothing of us." "I know more than you think," he said, his voice quiet. "I know your father's ledgers are a work of fiction. I know his ships out of Liverpool are carrying half the cargo he claims, and he is running a dangerous line of credit with men who do not appreciate delays." She recoiled. "You are lying. You are his rival. You seek to ruin him." "He is already ruined, Miss Holland," Garrick stated, not cruelly, but as one states a fact. "He is a drowning man, and he is pulling you under with him." He took a step closer. "My advice? Get in the lifeboat. Ashworth is not a lifeboat. He is an anchor." Before she could form a reply, a commotion erupted from the ballroom. The music, which had just begun a new measure, screeched to a halt. A woman shrieked. Genevieve's blood ran cold. She ran back to the doorway, Garrick just behind her. The scene was frozen. In the center of the dance floor, where moments before couples had been gliding, stood 3 new figures. A woman, older, dressed in a garish but expensive purple silk, her face a mask of pure vindication. A younger man, perhaps 30, with a weak chin and furious, darting eyes. And a third man, a solicitor by the look of his grim black coat, holding a leather satchel. But all eyes were on the man they were confronting. Bartholomew Holland, his face the colour of spoiled cream, stood trembling before them. "Where is it, Bartholomew?" the younger man shouted, his voice cracking with rage. "Where is the money you stole from my mother? Get out!" Lady Beaumont, the hostess, finally found her voice. "How dare you interrupt my ball? Who are you?" The younger man turned, his eyes sweeping the assembled ton. He relished the audience. "Who am I?" he boomed. "I am Victor Cromwell. And that man," he pointed a shaking finger at Genevieve's father, "is Bartholomew Holland, my father. And this," he gestured to the woman in purple, "is Mrs. Marjorie Holland, his wife." A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. Genevieve's hand flew to her mouth. "No!" "Oh, yes," Victor Cromwell sneered, spotting Genevieve in the doorway. "And who, pray tell, is that? The latest mistress, or perhaps her daughter?" Bartholomew Holland lunged. "You will be silent. You are nothing. You are a lie." "A lie?" The solicitor stepped forward, his voice dry and precise. "Mr. Holland, I have here the marriage certificate from St. Nicholas's Church in Liverpool, dated April 14th, 1820. 25 years ago. 2 full years before he had met and married Genevieve's mother in London. "He is a bigamist!" Marjorie shrieked, tears of fury, not sadness, cutting paths through her face powder. "He married me, took my father's shipping business, and when it was secure, he vanished, moved to London, changed his name slightly, and started a new life, a life built on my money." The secret was not just spilled, it was a flood. Every word was a hammer blow against the foundations of Genevieve's life. Her father, a thief, a bigamist. Her mother, not a wife, but a victim, a fraud. And she, that makes her, Philippa Ogilvy whispered from the crowd, her eyes wide with malicious horror. Oh my! The word hung in the air, unspoken but understood by all. Illegitimate, a bastard. The whispers were a roar now. Scandalous. His poor other wife. And the girl, penniless. Lord Ashworth, who had been staring, took a deliberate, large step away from where Genevieve stood. He inspected his fingernails as if she had suddenly ceased to exist. Genevieve's vision tunneled. The faces of the crowd, people who had dined at her table, people she had known her entire life, blurred into a grotesque mural of scorn, pity, and morbid fascination. Her father had collapsed into a chair, his face in his hands. He was not denying it. It was true. Her entire life was a lie. The St. James's house, her name, her future, all of it. Ash. The floor seemed to drop away. The heat, the smell of wax and perfume rushed up to choke her. Her knees buckled. She was falling, tumbling into the blackness that had just swallowed her world. She never hit the floor. Just as the darkness claimed her, a hard, strong arm wrapped around her waist, catching her with a force that was almost painful. She was lifted, scooped from the floor as if she weighed nothing. Through the dizzying fog, she looked up. She saw a harsh jawline, a starched white cravat, and 2 cold grey eyes that were not cold at all, but blazing with a controlled, calculating fire. Rhys, the Duke of Garrick, held her. He had reached her first. He didn't look at her. He looked at the stunned, silent crowd. He cut a path directly through them, Genevieve held against his chest. "Make way," he commanded. His voice wasn't loud, but it sliced through the silence like a saber. And they did. The ton, for the first time in their lives, obeyed the one man they had all agreed to despise. Genevieve's world returned to her in fragments. First, the scent of lavender and old, polished wood. Second, the feel of fine spun linen, infinitely softer than anything in her own home. Third, the silence. A deep, profound, and heavy silence, as if the house itself were holding its breath. She was not in her own bed. Her eyes snapped open. The room was vast, painted in a deep emerald green, the furniture a heavy, dark mahogany. A fire crackled in the grate, though it was May. This room was in a house built to withstand northern winters, not a stuffy London townhouse. "She's awake, Your Grace." The voice was female, starched and neutral. Genevieve sat up too quickly. The room spun, and the events of the ballroom, the shout, the face of Marjorie Holland, the word bastard hanging in the air, crashed back into her. She choked on a sob. "Drink this." A woman in a severe black dress, her grey hair pulled into a tight bun, was holding a cup of tea. This was Mrs. Davies, a woman whose reputation for efficiency was almost as formidable as her employer's. Genevieve took it, her hands shaking. Where am I?" "Garrick House." The Duke's voice came from the doorway. Rhys stood there, still in his evening wear, though his cravat was undone. He looked less like a duke, and more like a predator who had just secured his prey. "You brought me here?" Genevieve's voice was a ragged whisper. The implication was horrifying. An unmarried and now illegitimate woman, alone in the home of the most notorious bachelor in London. He had not saved her. He had simply finalized her ruin. "Where else was I to take you?" he asked, his tone reasonable. "To your father's house? The one that is currently being seized by creditors? The one with your father's other family on the doorstep, demanding their due?" Genevieve flinched at every word. "My father." "Arrested," Rhys said flatly. "The constables arrived just as I was leaving. A charge of bigamy is the least of his worries. The men he owes money to are not as civil as the law." "And my mother," she whispered, the word tasting like ash. The woman, Mrs. Holland." A flicker of something, pity perhaps, crossed Rhys's face. "Your mother, Mrs. Anne Holland, collapsed. Your friend, Miss Ogilvy, had her taken to her family's home. She is indisposed. She will not be receiving visitors." "Indisposed," Genevieve repeated numbly. It was a society word for destroyed. "So I am alone." "You are here," he stated. He walked to the window, parting the heavy velvet curtains to look out over the dark, sprawling gardens. "The Morning Post will have the story by dawn. The Times will have the financial details by noon. By tomorrow, every door in London will be closed to you. You will be a pariah, Miss Holland, a curiosity. You have no money, no name, and no future." "Then why am I here?" she cried, her terror finally giving way to a raw, desperate anger. "To be your entertainment? A new fallen creature for the devil's bargain to play with? Is this my price for being rescued? To become your mistress?" Mrs. Davies, to her credit, did not even blink. Rhys turned from the window. His grey eyes were unreadable, but there was no malice in them, only a stark, unnerving clarity. "I do not want a mistress, Miss Holland," he said, his voice quiet. "I want an asset." She stared at him, confused. "You are in a cage. You have two options. You can leave this house, walk out the front door, and be torn apart by the gossips, the creditors, and the opportunists who will offer you protection in exchange for the very thing you just accused me of demanding. You will not last a week." He paused, letting the reality of her situation settle around her. "Or you can stay. You can have this room. You will be fed, clothed, and, most importantly, protected. No one will touch you here. No one will dare." "And in return?" she asked, her voice trembling. "In return," he said, You will work for me. This was not the bargain she had expected. Work? As what? A governess? A companion? A small, humorless smile touched his lips. I have no children, and I cannot abide companions. No, you will be something far more useful. You will be my memory. My key. He stepped closer to the bed. Your father, Bartholomew, was a fool, but he was a meticulous fool. He kept 2 sets of ledgers, one for his partners and one for himself. I know this because he tried, once, to swindle me. I don't understand, she said. He is in business with a man far worse than I am, Miss Holland. A man who does not just bend the rules, but breaks them, and breaks the people who get in his way. Your father was his banker, his shipper, his launderer, and now your father is gone, and this man's enterprises are vulnerable, as is his money. And you want this money? I want him, Reese said, and for the first time, Genevieve heard a raw, primal anger in his voice. I want to destroy him. Your father's real ledgers are the weapon I need. They are hidden, likely in your father's private study. You are the only one who would know where. He was offering her a choice she couldn't comprehend. He wasn't offering salvation. He was offering revenge. You want me to betray my father? Your father, Reese said, his voice cutting, was a lie from the moment you were born. He betrayed your mother. He betrayed his other wife. He betrayed you. He built your entire life on a foundation of theft and deceit. Loyalty to such a man is not a virtue, Miss Holland. It is a suicide pact. He walked to the door. Mrs. Davies will bring you food. You will not be disturbed. Think on my offer. The cage is locked either way. The only question is whether you wish to be a prisoner, or if you will help me find the man who holds the key. He left, closing the door with a soft, definitive click. Genevieve was left alone with the crackling fire, the scent of lavender, and the impossible, terrible bargain. Genevieve did not sleep. She paced the emerald room until her feet ached, her mind a whirlwind of betrayal and fear. Reese had offered her a price, and it was, as she'd suspected, her soul, just not in the way she'd imagined. He wanted her to be a Judas, to sell her own father to a man who was, by all accounts, his greatest rival. But the Duke's words echoed. Loyalty to such a man is not a virtue. Her father had known. Every ball, every gown, every lesson in etiquette, all of it was a lie he had told to her and her mother for 20 years. He had been grooming her for a respectable marriage while he had a whole other wife, a whole other son in Liverpool. The life he had built was a house of cards, and he had used her as the queen, the face of a fraudulent hand. By dawn, her tears were dry. Her grief had hardened into something cold and sharp. She was not a Holland. She was not a debutante. She was nothing. And when you are nothing, you have nothing left to lose. She found Mrs. Davies in the hall. I wish to see the Duke. Mrs. Davies nodded, as if this were the most normal request in the world. His Grace is in his study. This way, miss. The study was the heart of the house, a room not of comfort, but of industry. One entire wall was a map of the world, crisscrossed with shipping routes. The desk was a mountain of paper. Reese was there, dressed not as a duke, but as a businessman, his sleeves rolled up, a pen in his hand. He looked as if he hadn't slept either. He didn't look up when she entered. You've made a decision? I will help you, Genevieve said, her voice clear and steady. He finally raised his eyes. That cold grey gaze assessed her. Why? You said my father is in business with a man, a dangerous man. You said you want to destroy him. You didn't tell me his name. Lord Mortimer, Reese said. Baron Mortimer. An old name, an old title, and a blacker heart than any man I know. Genevieve had heard the name. Mortimer was known for his extravagant parties, his string of mistresses, and his immense, unaccountable wealth. "You want to destroy him," she said. "But you said you were rivals in shipping. This isn't about business, is it?" "Everything," Reese said, "is about business." "You are lying," she shot back, surprised at her own boldness. "You said you wanted me as an asset. Assets do not work in the dark. If I am to be your key, you must show me the lock." "Why Mortimer?" Reese leaned back in his chair, studying her for a long, silent moment. He seemed to be weighing the cost of the truth. "You are correct," he said finally. "It is not just about business. It is personal." He stood, walking to the map on the wall. He tapped a route from the West Indies. "Mortimer doesn't trade in sugar, Miss Holland. He trades in people. After the Act of 1807, the trade became illegal, but infinitely more profitable. He runs slaves, opium, and weapons. He is a cancer. And your father gave him the ships to do it." Genevieve felt sick. "And my father knew. He knew. He laundered the profits. Mortimer's trade is what was keeping your family afloat these last 3 years." Reese turned from the map. His face was a mask of cold fury. "My father and my elder brother," he said, his voice flat, "were fools. They gambled. They lost. They borrowed. And they borrowed from Lord Mortimer. The debt was considerable. My father offered Mortimer a partnership in our shipping line to clear it." "And you inherited," Genevieve whispered, connecting the pieces. "I inherited," he agreed. "My father and brother were on their way to sign the papers when their carriage went off the road. You've heard the rumors. That I had them killed to gain the title. The truth is, Mortimer had them killed. He didn't want a partnership. He wanted it all. He staged the accident, intending for the estate to fall into chaos so he could pick up the pieces for pennies on the pound." "But he didn't count on you," Genevieve said. "He didn't," Reese agreed. "I had been running the unimportant parts of the business for years, the parts my father found boring, the ledgers, the manifests. I knew where every penny was. When they died, I stepped in. I found the real debt, and I paid it, in full, in cash. I emptied my accounts to be free of him. But you weren't free. No, because he had my first wife. The rumors, the wife who threw herself from the cliffs." "Letitia," Genevieve said, her voice barely audible. Reese's jaw tightened. "Letitia. She was Mortimer's sister. The marriage was arranged before my father died, part of the original bargain. I was forced to honor it. She was unwell, unstable, but she was also his spy. She lived in my house and reported my every move back to her brother. I was trapped. I couldn't move against him, or he would use her. He would have her declared insane, lock her away. Or worse. What happened? I tried to get her away. To a doctor in Geneva. I thought if I could get her free of Mortimer's influence, I could help her. But she was terrified of him. She sent him a message, telling him of my plan. He replied. I don't know what his letter said, but I found her an hour later, at the bottom of the cliffs on my estate. He looked at Genevieve, and she saw it. Not the coldness of a killer, but the deep, abiding guilt of a man who had failed to save a life. Mortimer spread the rumor that I drove her to it, Reese said. The Ton was only too happy to believe it. It confirmed everything they wanted to think about me. The dark, ruthless upstart. I let them. I let them call me the devil's bargain because it kept them away. It kept me safe while I rebuilt, while I gathered the strength to do what I must. He gestured to the desk. I have been hunting him for 2 years. I have cut off his roots, starved his accounts. But I've never had definitive proof. Nothing to take to the crown. Nothing that links his name, his title, to the crimes, your father's hidden ledgers. That is the proof. That is the knife I need to cut his heart out. He had laid his entire life bare. He had given her his secrets, just as hers had been torn from her. He was offering her not just revenge, but justice. "My father's study," Genevieve said, her voice shaking but firm. "At the house in St. James's, behind the portrait of his grandfather. There is a wall safe. The key is in a false bottom in his desk drawer. I saw him use it once." Rhys nodded, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. "Good. I want to be there," she said. "Absolutely not. It's too dangerous." "You said I am your asset, your key. I am not a key you use and throw away. I will not hide in this house like your first wife. I will not be a victim. I want to see the proof myself. I want to see his face when you take him." Rhys studied her, a new, strange light in his eyes. It was respect. "Very well," he said. "We go tonight." Garrick House moved with silent, military precision. Rhys did not, Genevieve learned, employ thugs. He employed experts. There was a man named Piers, who looked more like a clerk than a bodyguard, and a younger man, Thomas, who could apparently open any lock in London. They travelled not in the Duke's ostentatious carriage, but in a plain, black coach that blended with the night. They didn't go to the front door of her former home, the home that now had a private guard, hired by the Cromwells, posted out front. They went to the mews, the servants' entrance, which Thomas opened in under a minute. The house was cold and still. It already felt like a tomb. Genevieve's heart hammered against her ribs, but she walked with a steady, determined pace. She was a ghost here, haunting the life that had been stolen from her. The study was as her father had left it. Papers were scattered, his hasty attempt to flee. There, Genevieve pointed to the large, imposing portrait of a stern-faced ancestor. Piers lifted it clear. The wall safe was modern and complex. "That," Thomas the lockpick mused, "is a Mr. Brummer's finest. That will take 10 minutes. "We don't have 10, Rhys said, his gaze on the study door, listening. "I have the key," Genevieve said. She went to the desk, her hands tracing the familiar wood. She slid her fingers under the lip of the main drawer and pressed a small, hidden catch. A thin panel at the bottom of the drawer, beneath its contents, popped open. Inside, nestled on velvet, was a single, intricate brass key. Thomas let out a low whistle of appreciation. Genevieve took the key. Her hand was shaking so violently she could barely fit it in the lock. Rhys placed his hand over hers. His skin was warm, his grip steadying. It was not a gesture of comfort, it was one of command. "Focus." She turned the key. The lock clicked. Piers opened the heavy steel door. Inside were 3 volumes, bound in plain black leather. Not ledgers, journals. "My God," Genevieve whispered, taking one out. She opened it. It was not just numbers. It was her father's small, cramped handwriting. Dates, names, cargo manifests, and private, damning notes. "LM insists on the dark cargo for the return from Freetown. The risk is immense, but the profit. Victor is a drain. Marjorie bleeds me. Must secure the Ashworth marriage for G soon. It will give me the credit I need." He had been using her, his own daughter, as collateral. The proof was right there, in his own hand. "We have it," Rhys said, his voice a low growl of triumph. He took the books, handing them to Piers, who slipped them into a reinforced satchel. "Wait." Genevieve's eyes had fallen on something else in the safe. A small, rosewood box. She knew it. It was her mother's. It held her, Anne's, letters, the ones her father had written to her during their courtship. Why would he keep them in his private safe? She opened the box. The letters were there, tied in a blue ribbon, but beneath them was another document, a single sheet of vellum. It was not a marriage certificate. It was an annuity. Dated 20 years ago, it was a legal agreement, signed by her father and another man, promising to pay the sum of £5,000 a year to Mrs. Anne Cromwell for her discretion and the care of her daughter, Genevieve. Cromwell, the name of the man in the ballroom. Victor Cromwell. Genevieve, what is it? Rhys asked, seeing the blood drain from her face. She held the paper up. My mother, Anne. She wasn't a victim. Rhys read the document. His eyes widened. She knew, Genevieve whispered, the world tilting again. She knew he was married. She was his mistress, the whole time. The social climbing, the desperation for the Ashworth marriage. It wasn't to secure their position, it was to create one for her, a bastard daughter that her father couldn't or wouldn't provide. Her mother hadn't been duped. She had been a willing accomplice. The entire fabrication of her life was not just her father's, it was her mother's too. A crash from the floor below. Intruders! A man shouted. The Cromwell's guard. Time to go, Rhys said, grabbing her arm. The front way, Piers said. It's closer. They ran from the study, down the grand staircase that she had descended 100 times in fine gowns. At the bottom, 2 men stood, one in a guard's uniform, the other. It was Victor Cromwell. His weak face was twisted in a mask of rage and greed. So, he spat, blocking their path. The bastard returns with her new keeper, stealing what is rightfully mine. Get out of the way, Cromwell, Rhys commanded, pushing Genevieve behind him. This house is mine, my mother's. He stole it, and you, he pointed at Rhys. You're just like him, a thief. Victor lunged, not at Rhys but at Genevieve. He was mad with a lifetime of perceived injustice. Rhys moved faster than any man his size should. He didn't strike Victor. He simply moved him, grabbing his arm, twisting it, and slamming him against the wall with a sickening crunch. Victor screamed. Piers the coach. Thomas the door, Rhys ordered. He didn't release Victor until his men had the door open, the dark street waiting. He pulled Genevieve with him, out of the house, out of the life that was now utterly, completely, and irrevocably gone. As the carriage clattered away, Genevieve sat in the darkness, the journals in her lap, the terrible annuity clutched in her hand. She was not crying. She was empty. They lied, she said to the darkness. Both of them. My entire life. Everyone. Rhys sat across from her. He did not offer platitudes. He did not say, I'm sorry. He simply said, not everyone, Miss Holland. He lit the small carriage lamp. In its dim glow, she saw the journals, the weapons. What now? She asked, her voice hollow. Now, Rhys said, his hand resting on the satchel. We make the truth matter. We take these to the Home Secretary. We take Mortimer down. And my parents, they will face the justice they have earned. But you, Genevieve, you will be free. It was a strange, terrifying thought. She looked at the man across from her, the devil of Garrick, the murderer, the ruthless rival. He was the only person in the world who had told her the truth. The next 3 days were a blur. Rhys did not hide Genevieve. Instead, he did the opposite. He presented the journals to the Home Secretary, Lord Sidmouth, a personal acquaintance. An emergency session was convened. Bow Street was mobilized. The Tun was rocked by a scandal far greater than a mere bigamy. Lord Mortimer, one of their own, was a trafficker and a traitor, using his ships to move arms to Napoleon's loyalists in France. Genevieve was the star witness. She sat in a high-backed chair in a government office, Rhys at her side, and she read her father's words. She explained his codes. She detailed the names, the dates, the ships. She did it with a cold, clear precision that unnerved the old men in the room. They had expected a weeping, ruined girl. They were met with a woman of iron. Rhys's name, in the process, was cleared. Lord Sidmouth, armed with the new evidence, reopened the case of Letitia, the Duke's first wife. The letter Mortimer had sent her was retrieved from her sealed possessions. It was not a comfort. It was a threat. If you speak to the doctor, I will not protect you from your husband's accidents. You know what he is. Silence is your only safety. Failure is not an option. He had convinced his own sister that Rhys was the monster, trapping her between two impossible, terrifying men. The devil's bargain was not Rhys. It was the choice Mortimer had given his sister. As they left the office, the sun was setting. Rhys had bought her a new dress, a simple, elegant grey wool. She was no longer a debutante in silks. She was a woman in armour. "It is done," he said, handing her into the carriage. "Mortimer will be arrested by morning." "And my family's?" "Bartholomew Holland will likely be transported. His testimony against Mortimer will save him from the gallows. Victor and Marjorie, they have been given a small, conditional allowance from my own accounts and sent back to Liverpool. They are content. They were only ever after the money. And my Anne? She is at a convalescent home in Bath. She has her annuity. She will be comfortable." Genevieve nodded. It was all so clean, so transactional. "Where do I go now?" she asked. "That," Rhys said, "is your choice. I have an estate in Kent, a small cottage. It is quiet. You would be safe there. You could choose a new name, live a new life." He was offering her an escape, a gentle, quiet exile. It felt wrong. "And you?" she asked. "Will you return to your northern cliffs and your reputation?" "My reputation," he said, "is no longer what it was. But London holds nothing for me." The carriage stopped. They were back at Garrick House. "I will have Mrs. Davies pack your things." "No." He stopped, his hand on the carriage door. "No? I do not want a cottage," she said. "I do not want to hide. I have been living a lie my entire life. I will not start a new one." "Genevieve," he said, his voice low, "you cannot stay here. You cannot be seen with me. The Tun, they will call you my mistress, no matter what the truth is." "Let them," she said, meeting his gaze. "What are they to me? They are the people who watched me fall and did nothing. They are the people who whispered about you while trading at Mortimer's tables. You said you wanted an asset. You said I was your key. A key belongs to a lock. I do not wish to be in Kent." His grey eyes searched her face. The air in the carriage was thick, charged with the unsaid. He had saved her life, and she, in turn, had given him back his. They were bound, not by society or propriety, but by the shared wreckage of their pasts. "If you stay," he said, his voice rough, "it will not be as my asset, Genevieve." "I know." He leaned in. He did not kiss her. He simply rested his forehead against hers. "They will try to destroy you." "They already have," she whispered. "And I am still here." He finally, truly, smiled. It transformed his harsh face, lighting it from within. "Then you must stay for dinner, Miss Holland. Mrs. Davies is making, well, I have no idea. But I am sure it will be excellent." It was a start, a beginning forged in scandal, but real, but the serpent was not yet dead. As Genevieve stepped from the carriage, a small, ragged boy ran up from the shadows. "Miss Holland! Miss!" Piers moved to intercept him, but the boy was quick. He shoved a crumpled note into her hand. "From your mother," he hissed. "She's not in Bath. She's at the King's Head Inn, Southwark. He has her. Please, miss." Genevieve's blood turned to ice. She uncreased the note. "Genevieve, my child, forgive me. I am a prisoner. Mortimer's men. Please, help me." It was her mother's handwriting. "It's a trap," Rhys said, reading it over her shoulder. "I know," she said, her voice shaking. "But I have to go." "Genevieve, no. Sidmouth has Mortimer. He's being arrested as we speak." "Does he? Or is this his last, desperate move? He knows I'm the witness. If I vanish, the case is weaker. He'll use her to get to me." "I will handle it," Rhys said, his face hardening. "I will send Piers." "She is my mother," Genevieve said, clutching the note. "She lied to me. She was an accomplice, but she is still my mother. I will not hide in your house while she is in his hands. Not after Letitia." His name was cleared, but the wound was still there. She had, perhaps unintentionally, struck it. He looked at her, his jaw set. "You are right. We will not let history repeat. We will go, but we do it my way." The King's Head Inn in Southwark was a far cry from St. James's. It was a ramshackle building near the river, smelling of stale gin and desperation. Rhys's way involved Piers and Thomas entering through the back, while he and Genevieve, dressed in dark, heavy cloaks, went in the front. "Room 12, the innkeeper grunted, barely looking up. The halls were narrow. A drunkard snored in a corner. "This is madness," Rhys whispered, his hand on the small concealed pistol in his coat. "This is family," she whispered back. Room 12 was at the end of the hall. The door was unlocked. Rhys pushed it open. The room was dim, lit by a single candle. Anne Holland sat on the bed, her face pale, her hands twisting in her lap. "Mother," Genevieve said, rushing forward. "Oh, Genevieve!" Anne cried, standing. And from the shadows behind the door, Lord Mortimer stepped out, a long-barreled dueling pistol in his hand. He was an elegant man, even in the squalor, with a handsome, cruel face. "What a touching reunion," he sneered. "And you brought the Duke. How convenient." "It's over, Mortimer," Rhys said, his voice level, his body positioned between Mortimer and Genevieve. "Sidmouth has the journals. The runners are on their way to your home right now." Mortimer laughed, a cold, empty sound. "They will find an empty house and a cold fire. Do you think I am a fool? I knew the moment that little weasel Holland was arrested that my time was short. I've spent the last 3 days moving my assets. The journals," he spat, "are an inconvenience, but a witness is a problem." "Let them go," Rhys said. "Her?" Mortimer gestured to Anne. "She came willingly, for a price. She has always been practical." Genevieve looked at her mother. Anne wouldn't meet her eyes. He promised to take me to France," Anne whispered. "With money." "She was never your mother, child," Mortimer said to Genevieve. "She was my informant, long before your father even met her. She told me when Holland was getting weak. She told me when he was planning to run." The final betrayal. It was so vast, so complete, that Genevieve felt a strange, cold calm descend. "And Letitia?" Rhys asked, his voice deadly quiet. "Was she practical, too?" "My sister was a fool," Mortimer snarled, his mask of civility cracking. "She was weak. I gave her a simple choice. She chose poorly. As are you, Garrick. You should have taken your victory and let me fade away. But you came here. For her, a bastard. A nobody." He raised the pistol, aiming it not at Rhys but at Genevieve. "You will not testify." Rhys moved, shoving Genevieve down. The room exploded with the sound of the gunshot. Genevieve screamed. Rhys grunted, stumbling back, a dark stain spreading on his shoulder. He hadn't been fast enough to avoid it completely. Mortimer smiled, cocking the hammer for a second shot. "No!" Anne Holland shrieked, and she did something no one expected. The practical, weak woman who had betrayed everyone lunged. She threw herself at Mortimer, grabbing his arm. "You promised!" she screamed. It was the only diversion Genevieve needed. She didn't hesitate. She didn't cower. She grabbed the heavy water jug from the washstand and brought it down on Mortimer's head with all her strength. He collapsed in a heap. Silence. Rhys was leaning against the wall, his hand pressed to his shoulder. He was pale, but his eyes were alive and fixed on her. "You hit very hard, Miss Holland," he breathed. "Rhys!" She ran to him, tearing a strip from her petticoat to press against the wound. "You are hurt. It is nothing. It will heal." The door burst open, Piers and Thomas crashing in, guns raised. They took in the scene. Mortimer unconscious, Anne Holland sobbing hysterically, and Genevieve holding the bleeding Duke against the wall. "Well," Piers said, lowering his pistol, "it seems we are late." 6 months later, the wind off the North Sea was cold, but the library at Garrick's northern estate, Ravenscar, was warm. Genevieve stood at the tall window, watching the waves crash against the cliffs, the same cliffs where Letitia had died. The scandal had been magnificent. The trial of Lord Mortimer was the talk of the decade. He was found guilty and hanged. Bartholomew Holland was transported to Australia. Anne Holland, in light of her final act of assistance, was quietly allowed to retire to France, her annuity intact. Genevieve had testified. She had stood before the House of Lords, her name a ruin, and she had spoken the truth. When it was over, Rhys had offered her his hand, and she had taken it. They had left London that same day. "They are still sharp," she said, not turning. Rhys came up behind her, his arm, now healed, wrapped around her waist. He wore no cravat, no suit, just a simple shirt and breeches. He was at home here. His shoulder was scarred, a permanent reminder. "The cliffs are not the danger," he said, his chin resting on her hair. "The danger is the man who pushes you toward them." "And you?" she asked, turning in his arms. "Are you not a dangerous man, Your Grace?" "Terrifying," he agreed, a slow smile spreading. "But not to you." He had not asked her to marry him. It was, in its own way, the most romantic thing he could have done. A marriage, for her, had always been a transaction, a bargain. He would not insult her with one. He had simply offered her his home, his name, should she want it. She had taken both. "The papers arrived from London," he said. "The Morning Post?" "Oh, and what scandal am I in this week? The Devil's Duchess?" "Worse," he said, his eyes twinkling. "They call you the heroine of Suffolk. They say you are a model of fortitude. The Ton, they are fickle. They have decided you are a tragic, romantic figure." "How utterly boring," Genevieve said, leaning her head against his chest. "I prefer the Devil's Duchess." "As do I," he murmured. He kissed her, a deep, possessive kiss that tasted of the sea and the promise of a life that was finally, unequivocally, real. The secrets had been spilled. The ballroom was a distant, flickering memory. And the Duke who had caught her, the man no one had trusted, had been the only man worth trusting at all. The ballroom lights are out, but Genevieve and Rhys's story is just beginning. They were two outcasts, ruined by the secrets of others, who found their truth not in the glittering world that scorned them, but in each other. Theirs is a reminder that the world can strip you of your name, your home, and your future, but it can only truly break you if you let it. Thank you for joining us for this story. If you were captivated by Genevieve's journey and the devil's bargain, please show your support by hitting that like button. Don't forget to share this video with a friend who loves a story of scandal and survival. And so you never miss another drama, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. We'll see you in the next story.